This morning, our first speaker that we will introduce is certainly no stranger to this podium. He is our state treasurer, Dale Follwell. We are always glad to have the state treasurer with us. Dale Follwell is a financial consultant from Winston-Salem. Prior to serving as our state treasurer, he was elected 4 terms to the North Carolina House of Representatives, including 2 years as our Speaker Pro Tem. After leaving the legislature, Governor Pat McCrory appointed him to serve as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce and charged him with managing the Employment Security Commission. A tough job, and he did a good job. As our state treasurer, Dale Follwell oversees the state's health plan and our state's financial portfolio. Let's give a warm Farm Bureau welcome to our friend, Treasurer Dale Follwell. Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you, President Wooten, and good morning. Just 10 short minutes on the financial condition of North Carolina these days. Number one, let's talk about the coveted AAA bond rating that North Carolina has. It doesn't matter where you go in North Carolina or how people are registered to vote. Everyone agrees that any time that you can borrow money and pay a lower rate of interest, that is good for public education, that is good for public safety, that's good for public roads and all the parks and the ports and all the core functions of our state government. North Carolina's balance sheet is very strong. We just had our AAA bond rating affirmed over the last few months. In addition to that, just a few weeks ago, the voters of North Carolina voted to approve the changing of North Carolina's Constitution to put an income tax cap at 7%. I came here today not to affirm what you may already think about a subject, but actually to inform you. This is the North Carolina Constitution. The income tax cap has been in the North Carolina Constitution for nearly 100 years. This is not something that the General Assembly just thought of. It's been in this book for nearly 100 years. Originally, it was put in at 6%. After the Depression and the bankruptcy of Asheville, it was raised by the voters to 10%. Now the voters have spoken overwhelmingly for it to be reduced back to 7%. The reason that you should care about the income tax cap is that it brings economic certainty to any business that wants to expand in North Carolina or actually relocate into North Carolina. The income tax cap approval by the voters of this state exceeded the voter ID vote, and it also exceeded the constitutional amendment on hunting and fishing. This is a big deal that brings economic certainty all across North Carolina because, as I can tell you, over the next 20 years, when states are thinking about where to expand their business or where to relocate, they're going to be looking to states that are solvent and have tax certainty to them as individuals and as corporate taxpayers. Secondly, I want to tell you a little bit about the pension plan. The pension plan, many of you are on this pension plan, is one of the 5 most solvent in the United States, but it has tremendous headwinds. This year, I will pay out $6 billion in pension benefits to state and local employees. Gross, $6 billion. Our earnings this year in the pension plan are going to be basically flat or zero. The reason that should matter to you is that over the last 20 years, this pension plan has not earned its assumed rate of return on average for the last 20 years. That becomes vitally important when you're spending this much of the taxpayers' money and also the participants' money. At the end of the day, what we're doing is we're making sure that money is not leaving the pension plan when it shouldn't. Harlan Bowles, who Farm Bureau supported for decades, wore this very lapel pin that I'm wearing this morning. When Harlan Bowles left the Treasurer's office in 2001, this pension plan was paying $50 million in Wall Street fees. when I was sworn in last year, was paying nearly $700 million a year in Wall Street fees. We've cut Wall Street fees over $90 million so far, and we're on a 4-year run rate to cut Wall Street fees out of this pension plan by $400 million. Hope you like that. Secondly, and I don't mean this inelegantly, but the stock market doesn't care what my needs are, and they don't care what your needs are, nor does the real estate market or the gold market or the commodities market. The market is the market. So the second thing I'm doing is I'm making sure that money doesn't leave the plan unnecessarily. When we find people who have been cashing their deceased parents' pension check, for example, for 16 years, when the person's been deceased for 16 years, we're indicting them, we're charging them, and we're working with district attorneys to prosecute. This plan has 900,000 people on it, and we found a person last year who had been one individual who created a $266,000, $250,000 overpayment because they had been cashing their deceased parents' pension check. Secondly, unfortunately, we are charging elected officials, we are taking pension credit away from elected officials who put their left hand on the Bible and raise their right hand to uphold the Constitution and the laws of your communities. People should not be public servants and be convicted of embezzling money and receive pension credit while they were doing it. If you read the News and Observer recently, unfortunately, the Register of Deeds of Wake County is the last one. This person was receiving a pension payment of $89,000 a year and was convicted for embezzling over $1 million from the Wake County Register of Deeds office. People should not be getting pension credit while they're committing crimes and embezzling money from the taxpayers of this state, and I hope you like that. Very briefly, let me talk about health care as we go forward. No one in this state consumes health care. It consumes you. It is the only thing in your life and in your client's life where they don't know the value and the price of what they're getting. I'm very appreciative of all those that are in the healthcare community, but the bottom line is that unlike everything else you do in your life, in healthcare, the customer's over here and the payer's over here. When you buy a cup of coffee or a tank of gasoline, the customer and the payer are right beside each other. When you consume health care in this state, the customer's over here, the payer's over here. The customer doesn't know what the payer's paying, mostly an insurance company, and the payer doesn't know what happened to the customer. We're going to be closing that gap and bring transparency to health care in North Carolina. I hope you appreciate that. How did all this start? It didn't start with me deciding that I wanted to apply for the job of being the state treasurer. All this began years and years ago. 7 years ago, the state auditor of North Carolina put out a report, and on page 3 of this report, it says the state health plan is at risk. You know, when you're the keeper of the public purse and the treasurer of North Carolina, you never want the word at risk coming at you from the auditor's office. The state health plan is at risk because even though the plan spends over $3 billion a year just for health care and pharmaceutical benefits, just for state employees and retirees, what does over $3 billion mean to you? We spend more money in this state health plan than is appropriated to the entire university system on a yearly basis. We spend more money on this state health plan than is appropriated to justice and public safety across North Carolina. This is a huge expenditure. Even though the plan spends over $3 billion, the plan's auditors do not have access to the vendor contracts and cannot verify that the state is receiving the proper contractual discounts. Raise your hand if you want the state treasurer paying bills that he doesn't know what the bill is supposed to be for. Thank you. No one in this audience pays a bill unless you know what you're supposed to be paying. And that's what we're trying to do on behalf of the state employees and retirees and taxpayers like them. The second part of this is I sent a letter to the state hospital. You don't hear it called the state hospital very often, but it's often called UNC Healthcare. I send this one entity, we send this one entity over $300 million a year just for health care for active and retired state employees. I said, I know what you're charging. What am I supposed to pay? I know how intelligent you are and what great photographic memories you have. So even early enough this morning, let me explain to you and show you what they sent me of what an appendectomy, a tonsillectomy, or a knee replacement is supposed to cost at the state hospital. Are you ready? 150 pages of every single price was completely blacked out. As they said at the Wilson Times, let's get this straight. The state treasurer cannot get from the state hospital what the state health plan is supposed to pay for state employees' health care. If that bizarre sentence gives you a headache, we hope that it will go away before you're in need of any medical attention. See, you didn't think I'd get him to laugh this morning, Mr. President. So anyway, all we're trying to do is we're trying to get it right, keep it right on behalf of taxpayers in North Carolina. And as I close, why is this important to you? It's important to you because unlike the pension plan, according to Pew Research and all studies across the United States, North Carolina's unfunded health care liability is right behind Illinois on a per capita basis. We have over a $30 billion unfunded health care liability in North Carolina. This is becoming a big issue, and where my optimism is the fact that we have enough medical needs, we have enough providers of health care in this state, we have enough population, and we have enough billions of dollars that we ought to be able to figure this out. North Carolina has an opportunity to lead itself out of this $30 billion hole. And as the keeper of your public purse, I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen. While we're sitting here this morning, my wife is the cutest 250-year-old woman you've ever seen in your life. I say that slowly so you'll hear the next sentence. The reason that she's the cutest 250-year-old woman is that she is a tour guide at Old Salem. That is a 250-year-old Moravian community where she dresses up in the period uniform of that era. The reason I mention her name is that as these public servants come up before you over the next few minutes and few days, be sure to remember the spouses of public servants, who also bear a great burden. But also in her case, when she does something for you, you can see it or you can hear it. The things that I've spoken to you about are invisible. AAA bond ratings, assumed rates of return, unfunded health care liabilities, except that these issues are going to make the generational difference in the future of North Carolina. As we go into the Christmas season, I want to remind you, and some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, in the grief process, sometimes unknown is unloved. And I want to tell you the reason that I'm wearing this other lapel pin is in honor of state employees who have lost their lives in the line of duty this year. Every time that we spend a penny of your money, any time that we buy a paper clip or spend $1 at the treasurer's office, we think about those hardworking state employees who are out there right now while we're sitting here educating our kids, protecting us from crime, paving our roads, and all the other important functions of state government. We think about them because they do so with their feet and their back and their hands and their hearts and their minds and sometimes their lives. Thank you for your time this morning, Mr. President and Farm Bureau, and let me tell you that my last name is Follwell. My time is up, and I thank you for yours. God bless you.